Hello, and welcome to today's session on research communication. Your presenters today are both previous winners of the Researcher's Choice Communication Award, Joanne Jordan and Matthew Allen. Joanne Jordan is a freelance environmental social scientist working on the interconnected problems of climate change and poverty. She specialises in three broad interlinked themes: climate change resilience, adaptation and vulnerability of low-income and disadvantaged groups, risk perception and culture, and climate change communication through the creative arts. Matthew Allen completed his PhD in 2016 and now works within public engagement in Cardiff, Wales. Matthew works as part of a Wales-wide project to engage students aged 10 to 14 in physics, chemistry and biology. This includes developing virtual and augmented reality apps to teach students about physics and astrophysics. Matthew is also director of Cardiff Science Festival, which supports researchers and reaches thousands of people annually. Finally, just to introduce myself, my name is Christopher Tancock and I'm a communications manager at Elsevier. Prior to this, I spent 11 years in editorial publishing, managing a variety of journal portfolios. I'm based in Oxford and have degrees in European Studies and Linguistics. I will be moderating today's webinar and look forward to the interactions. Today's session will last approximately 40 minutes. You can visit the Researcher Academy Mendeley group to pose any questions to other researchers just like you. The link to the Mendeley group can be found under Resources on the bottom right of your page. We recommend you join the group. One more housekeeping announcement before we move on to the webinar. Resources and documents relevant to this webinar can be found under Downloads, also on the right-hand side of your Researcher Academy screen. You will also find below the details of the links, resources and projects that Matt and Joanne mentioned during the webinar. So, Joanne and Matt, thanks very much indeed for your time here today. So let's start off then by casting your minds back a few years, admittedly now, and let's think about the biggest challenges for early career researchers. So what's the most problematic thing, do you think? Let's start off, Joanne first, ladies first.
I think for me, the biggest challenge for academics is you're already overstretched with your research and teaching. And I think it may have just been my experience, but often with workload, it's divided according to research, impact, and administration work. And there isn't a separate category for impact, which is probably where I would put science communication. So I think there's a real challenge for early career researchers because it's often something they're doing as well as everything else they have to do. So I think that's a real challenge. And probably where I think the Academy needs to go is to move away from kind of two types of contracts they have for lecturers. So there's a research and teaching pathway and a teaching and scholarship pathway. And I think they need to move towards also having another two types of pathways. So for example, research and impact and teaching and impact. And I think that would make it a lot more manageable for early career researchers who perhaps want to focus a bit more on this. It definitely would have helped me.
That's interesting. Matt, is that something you'd agree with? Any other thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, no, I mean, 100% agree with. I think there's so much pressure on publishing papers on the real research that actually the impact and additional kind of things that really do that help society and really communicate your work really get put down to the bottom of the list in what pretty much most departments and universities and often your supervisor and line manager, what they want you to do. So yeah, I agree. It'd be better to have more of a kind of focus on impact and more support. I think it's also very difficult because so many of the contracts are short-term contracts when you're an early career researcher. And I think personally, that's something that always was a real struggle looking forward to having, just a contract for a couple of years here and there and never being able to really kind of set yourself down and look beyond more than a few years. So I think sort of getting over that hump and over that hurdle is definitely a bit of a problem.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So do you think the awards like the Communication Choice Award, do you think that kind of stuff helps to add a little bit of a highlight to this issue then? And do you think it sort of helps make people stop and think and perhaps consider whether more time and more resources should be devoted to this issue of impact communication?
I think so. Yeah, I think especially having won it and then going back to Cardiff University where I was at the time, and showing that I sort of get this recognition for it. I think actually suddenly people do realise that there is actually really good impact going on at the university, and that what you're doing is actually being recognised. That universities getting recognition, and actually you're making a real difference by doing it. So I do think that wars like this really do sway people's minds often to come around to the idea that what you're doing is as important as research in many ways. So yeah, I do think it's really important.